has now warned its citizens to step up safety precautions and to avoid crowded places amid a deepening dispute between Tokyo and Beijing. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara has stated that the latest advisory is a renewed call for safety measures as sentiments towards Japan reflected in Chinese media had deteriorated after recent diplomatic events affecting the neighboring ties. Listen in to what Kihara has stated.
今般の注意喚起ですが、最近の日中関係をめぐる現地での報道等の状況を踏まえて、在中国高官から改めて、在留邦人に対して十分な安全対策を呼びかけたものである。
Meanwhile, Japanese media has reported that a U.S. missile system has been withdrawn from Japan. The Japanese Defense Ministry has confirmed that the Typhoon mid-range capability missile launcher system of the U.S. Army deployed to the Iwakuni base in Yamaguchi Prefecture since September 2025 for the U.S.-Japan Resolute Dragon 2025 joint exercise has now been removed. Meanwhile, film distributors in China have suspended the screening of at least 2 Japanese films in the country amid escalating tensions with Tokyo. These developments come as Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi had earlier told the parliament that a hypothetical Chinese attack on democratically ruled Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. These remarks have, of course, sparked quite a sharp response from Beijing, which has signaled that it expects Takaichi to retract them in some or the other fashion. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Asta Chadha. She is an Associate Professor of International Relations at Ritsumeikan University, joining us from Kyoto. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you, we're of course receiving reports that the rhetoric has turned quite sharp, not just officially but also on social media platforms, whether it's within China or Japan. What are the people, how are the people of Japan reacting at this point?
Yeah, hi Pia, thanks for having me. Well, I mean, in Japan, the tensions do remain high. People are quite aware. I mean, you were mentioning earlier that Japan has, given out a safety advisory to its citizens in China. And likewise, I mean, the same has been done by China as well, because they are also discouraging their citizens from traveling to Japan. So we can see after a very long time of relatively sustained peaceful dialogue between Japan and China, despite their territorial or maritime disputes, this time it seems like relationships have definitely worsened a bit. But more than worsening of this relationship, I mean, which seems like, I mean, rather than calling it a complete overhaul of the system, I would say it's a temporary pause in their otherwise very functional relationship. This seems like a very calculated move on both sides, in terms of advising their citizens, because between China and Japan, historically, people-to-people connections remain very, very important. And so does, so do the aspects of soft power, including films or including the fact that tourism is big on both sides of the border. So, them asking their respective citizens not to travel or to travel very cautiously is once again reflecting the government's own perspective, which is that they expect the relationship probably to worsen a bit more.
Indeed, and we're also learning that the Japanese Defense Ministry has confirmed that the Typhoon missile launcher system of the U.S. Army, which was deployed for the Resolute Dragon 2025 exercise, has now been removed. I wanted to understand from you, was this a routine removal that was supposed to happen considering that the exercise has concluded, or has this taken place in the aftermath, specifically in the aftermath of the tensions now spiking?
Well, I mean, to be fair here, when these missile systems were, in some way installed in Japan, it was one of the first of its kind, with a mid-range capability, something that Washington had deployed in Japan. And there were protests from Russia and China, about it. But US at that point had said that the deployment was only to test their rapid wartime transitions and nothing very, very, permanent. And Japanese Defense Ministry at that time too had called it temporary. So its withdrawal within a week, after the exercises had already ended in September, those defense systems, they did remain a bit longer than they were intended to. But, from what we hear, at least in Japan, even the residents in Yamaguchi Prefecture and Hiroshima were petitioning for its removal, because Japan, at the core still remains a very peaceful peaceful nation, and they do not really support any war-related, infrastructure being built or accelerated in their territory. So despite this 2-month delay in withdrawing something that was already meant to be temporary, I don't see this as necessarily, signaling anything. That being said, the timing of it is definitely very, very curious. The fact that, they were withdrawn at this time when Japan-China row is kind of, out in the open, and it's becoming more severe in terms of Japan-China relationship. One could also read it as probably the U.S. Attempt to kind of to calm down this diplomatic tension spike that has happened in the recent weeks.
Absolutely, ma'am. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some further